Lists are another user interface type that's really handy for displaying information and getting interaction with the user in Android Wear. So they look something like that, and they're pretty easy to create, mostly because they work in exactly the same way as list views. So I'm just going to copy the code for the wearable list view down here, and you notice it goes inside frame layout. So we can leave frame layout as it is, but we're going to add in our list view. Notice the ID of wearable underscore list, and I'll just do the same for our rectangular layout as well. There we go. And I'll get rid of the fragment code from the previous video, and I'll also get rid of mTextView as we're not using that anymore. The process of setting up a wearable list view is a little bit different and rather more convoluted than setting up a normal Android list view. So let's go over to our guide here and use the sample code to get this all set up. So we've already added the wearable list view in our layout.xml. We now need to set up a layout implementation, which essentially will just define the layout of each of the items in the list view. So I'm going to copy this code and then we'll run through it and see what it means. So this will be a new class. So I'll add it here. So we just want a new Java class, and we'll call it the same thing as they did up here. So wearable list item layout. Okay, I'm going to keep package at the top, but I'm going to paste in everything else. So we're going to simplify this a fair bit, but we'll just add everything in to get started. Okay, so let's take a look. We've created a class called wearable list item layout, which extends linear layout. So it's based upon linear layout, and it uses the on-center proximity listener, which essentially looks to check which item in the list view is in the center. So you can see that we've got a different layout for the center item. It's got a different colored circle, it's bigger, and it's bolder than the other list items as well. So that's what the on-center proximity listener is. Then we've got our image view and text view. So the image view is the icon there, and the text view is obviously contains the text, list item 1, list item 2, etc. Then we've got some numbers here to represent how much the faded text should be faded, the faded circle color, and the chosen circle color. So all reasonably self-explanatory. This defines the context for the item layout, which is going to be the wearable list view, and this defines the attributes for the list item layout. Now in this method we're defining the style, which essentially involves defining the colors and fadedness of the circle. So we've got our gray and blue here. Now that's fine, but we don't have the action text faded alpha integer built in to this version of Android. So I'm just going to change that to say 0.7, and we'll see how that looks. And we do need to specify that that's a float. So the bigger the number here, the darker the faded text will be. The smaller the number, the lighter it will be. All right, working our way down. Now the onFinishInflate method is called when the view has been inflated, which you'll remember means either selected to be a rectangular or round view and then created. So it's the same as what will happen when the onLayout inflated listener is called. So it just means it's chosen the rectangular and round or round layout and then created the views within those. Now you can see we're expecting an image view and a text view in those layouts, but we haven't added those yet. So that's why we've got this error here. Don't worry about that. We'll add them in a minute. And then we've got on center position. So this will be called when a certain item in the list view becomes central. And that essentially just changes the circle to blue and sets the alpha to 1. So it's going to be fully dark. And then when it goes off center, the circle becomes the faded circle color, which is gray, and sets the alpha to our alpha that we set up there, which is 0.7. Okay, so that's what this new class is doing for us. Let's now add the layout. So this is where we add our image view and our text view. So we're going to create this as a new layout, and we'll use the same naming here. So list underscore item.xml. So let's add our new layout. So new layout resource file and list underscore item.xml. It doesn't matter all of these settings because we're going to get rid of the default code anyway. And then let's scrap all of that and paste in what we've got here. Okay. So all of this should more or less make sense. We've got layout width and height there. And then in each list item, which is what this is, it's a list item layout, we've got an image view and a text view. Now our errors here are to do with that particular text color, which isn't in our strings because we haven't added it. So I'm just going to get rid of the text color. Now this circle doesn't exist either. And so we're actually going to need to create it, which is something that we haven't done before, but I'll show you how to do it here. We can actually create shapes inside the drawable directory. So we can create a drawable resource file. I'll call it circle.xml. And then we can use XML to draw certain shapes. So if, for example, we want a circle, we can look for Android XML draw circle, something like that. And then this top one here, how can I draw a circle? Through XML drawable. There we go. Let's find an answer. That one's got a gradient, which we don't want. So let's try and keep it simpler. Nope, I don't think that one's got quite the answer that we're after. So let's go for the second one. Here we go. This looks more straightforward. So this will create a general oval shape, but if we don't set different widths and heights, then it will just be a circle. And we'll leave for the moment the color, width and height setting. We might need to change those later on. But the important thing is now we can go back to list item and select drawable circle, and that will then link up to this circle.xml file that we created up there. So that's how you add a general circle to your apps without having the need for a circle image. Okay, so now we've specified the layout of each individual list item. So next we need an adapter, and it's a fair bit more complicated than our simple array adapter that we created last time. So we need a separate class for it. So I'm going to add that in the same way here. So new Java class, and we'll call it adapter. And then again, I'll leave the package definition and then paste in everything else. Let's add all of the classes. Nearly there, and then we'll run through and see what this code is doing. And we don't need that to be private or static. So we'll just define it there. fact, we can make it public. Okay, so this class adapter is similar to ArrayAdapter, but it takes the wearable list view adapter and provides some customizations. So first off, it's got an array of strings called mDataset. That's what we're going to use to contain our content. It's also got a context and a layout inflator, which we'll use a little bit later on. Here we're defining a constructor. So this is a definition of how we would create an adapter. And we're saying that the code would need two things. It would need to know the context of the adapter, and it would need to know the data set, so the array of strings with which we want to populate our list view. Then it takes the context from there. It takes the layout inflator from the context. The context, of course, will just be our main activity. And then it takes its data set from the data set that we pass to it. All right. Then it creates another class called itemViewHolder, which is how we work with the listitem.xml, which is what controls the layout of each individual list item. And then the main thing that we're doing here is finding the text view within that view holder, or just within that list item. And the reason that we're not finding the image view here is because we don't need to do anything with the image. The image is just built in to each list item and doesn't change from one list item to the other. But we do want to change the text view for each item. Remember, the image view does change, but it changes here when the center position or the non-center position is detected. So now that we've got the text view, we're going to be able to do something with it. So here we are inflating our item view holder, which is just another way of saying create the individual list item, and it creates it with a layout of the generic list item, which allows us to put whatever we like inside it. Then this method is called when the individual list item is created, and what it's doing is creating an item holder, which is this class up here, which you can see has just got a text view inside it. And then it finds the text view and replaces its contents with the item in mDataset, which is the data that we passed to this class to appear on the list view. And it also sets a tag, which is quite handy. So the tag is going to be the position 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. And then finally, it's got a method which is required for adapters, getItemCount, which obviously just returns the number of items in mDataset. So the number of items in our list view. Okay, a lot to get to grips with. We're almost there. So that's our adapter to populate the list. And then finally, we have our code in the onCreate method. So I'm going to copy that first, and we'll deal with the last bits afterwards. So that goes back in main activity, and we'll do it here. So we track down our list view, which is our wearable list. So that's what we're working with. And then we set our adapter. So we're now creating our adapter class. So our custom adapter class that we've just made, and we're passing to it the context, and this is where we create our list of items that we want to appear on our list view. There's a code for that. So they've defined it up there, which is fine. I think I'll make it a little bit more custom. I'll have the usual suspects: Rob, Kirsten, Tommy, and Ralphie. And we've got a couple of issues here. The first is actually I've made a mistake creating this adapter class where I did. It should actually be inside the main activity class so that we can access it from there. So I'm just going to cut everything from there and then delete that class. And then I'm going to paste it just inside main activity there. And it does indeed actually need to be private and static so that we can instantiate it down here. Okay, so yeah, move your code over to there. Now I've got an issue here because there are various built-in classes called adapter, as you can see there. So I'm actually going to rename it to myAdapter, capital M because it's a class, just so that I can be very clear which one we're using. So now we've got myAdapter instead of adapter. Our one remaining issue is that the this here refers to the on layout inflated listener because we're inside that method at the moment. We want to refer to main activity. So we'll use main activity.this. And similarly here for the set click listener, we want main activity this. But that will give us an issue because we need to implement the click listener to main activity. But we can do that automatically. There we go. So our main activity now implements wearable list view.click listener, and that gives it two methods, on click and on top empty region click. And if we just go back over to the code that we didn't copy, there it is. So there's our on click. So this is what's going to happen when the user taps on one of the items in the table. So they're using V, we're using view holder. So that will get the tag of the item that was tapped, and I think we'll just log it for now. So app info, and we'll say item tapped. And it's an integer, so we'll convert it to a string and get the tag. And then on top empty region click is just if the user clicks on the empty region at the top of the screen, and as they did, we'll just leave that blank because we're not interested in that. We're only interested in them clicking on the list view itself. Okay. So let's just move these imports to where they should be, up here. And then let's give this a go. So we've written a lot of code there. Unfortunately, because of the way it all interacts with each other, there wasn't an easy point at which we could test it. So we'll test it now and keep our fingers crossed to check that we haven't made any mistakes. We've done quite a lot of advanced work with classes there, and we've also created our circle drawable. So there's a few new things going on. And we do have an error, I'm afraid. I thought I'd leave that in for you because it's a reasonably useful one to debug. So if we have a quick look at the error message, didn't find class com.example.wearable.notifications.wearListItem. And if we scroll up to see where that's actually being generated, it's when we're trying to inflate an XML file. So my suspicions go towards this list item, which you'll remember we just copy and pasted right in. And there, in fact, you can see we've got com.example.android support, etc. That's the wrong package name. So all we need to do is change that to our package name rather than the example one, which of course we should have done earlier. So com.example.robpercival.androidweardemo.wearListItemLayout. So that's the one that we want. And then we need to change the closing tag as well. Let's do that automatically. So now down at the bottom, we've got the right closing tag too. All right, let's try that again. And there we go. We've got our really nicely laid out list, and we can browse through it. And let's just see what happens when we do our tapping. If I tap on Kirsten, we get item number 1 tapped. Notice that we can only tap on the central item. If I tap on Tommy, then it just selects Tommy in the middle. It doesn't actually consider that a tap as far as we were concerned there. I'd have to tap on it again to get actually something to happen. That's just how the UI works. All right, so I hope you managed to follow me through with all of that. A lot of new stuff there. You might want to watch that video again if you want some clarification on some of the issues, or have a read of the Android developer material on lists. So I wanted to do a separate video on that one because it is such a big setup process, but hopefully that makes reasonable sense now, and you can see how to use lists, which are a really useful user interface element on Android Wear.